How Merleau-Ponty redefines space in modern art, a deep dive. The complexity of contemporary thought and artistic expression is frequently observed. Understanding Picasso demands more intellectual effort than comprehending Poussin or Chardin. Similarly, Giraudoux and Malraux present greater challenges than Marivaux or Stendhal. Some critics, like Monsieur Benda in France a decade ago, have mistakenly concluded that modern creators are merely Byzantine, difficult solely because they lack substance and substitute genuine artistry with mere intricacy. In reality, no assessment could be more misguided. Modern thought is indeed challenging, but purposefully so. It challenges conventional wisdom in its pursuit of truth. Current experiences no longer permit honest adherence to the clear, simplified concepts that common sense clings to. This revision of classical concepts, this questioning of seemingly straightforward notions, characterizes modern thought's commitment to experiential reality. Today, I'd like to examine this phenomenon through what initially appears to be the most straightforward concept of all, the idea of space. Traditional scientific understanding rests upon a clear separation between space and the physical world. In this classical view, space functions as a uniform medium where objects are distributed across three dimensions while maintaining their essential identity despite positional changes. Certainly, we observe many instances where relocating an object results in altered properties such as weight variations when moving something from the pole to the equator, or shape transformations when temperature increases melt a solid. However, these property changes aren't attributed to spatial displacement itself. The space at the poles and equator remains identical, only the physical conditions like temperature differ between locations. Thus, geometry's domain remains strictly separate from physics, form and content remain unmixed. An object's geometric properties would theoretically remain constant during movement if not for the variable physical conditions affecting it. This was classical science's fundamental assumption. Everything transforms, however, with the introduction of non-Euclidean geometries, which conceptualize space as having inherent curvature, a perspective suggesting that objects change merely through movement, that space itself possesses heterogeneity across its dimensions, which are no longer perfectly interchangeable and which impose certain transformations upon objects moving through them. Instead of a world where identical elements and variable elements are clearly demarcated and governed by different principles, we encounter a world where objects cannot maintain absolute self-identity, where forms and contents blur together, ultimately failing to provide the rigid framework offered by Euclidean homogeneous space. It becomes impossible to draw absolute distinctions between space and the objects within it. The concrete reality of space merges with our sensory experience of it. Fascinating parallels emerge between scientific inquiry and modern painting's explorations. Classical artistic instruction distinguished between drawing in color, first sketching the spatial outline of an object, then filling it with color. Cézanne, however, declared, as we paint, we draw, suggesting that neither in the perceived world nor in its artistic representation can contour and shape be strictly separated from color sensations or modulations. For Cézanne, color arrangements should naturally generate contours and forms as nature presents them to our eyes, encompassing everything, the object's distinctive character, its relationship to surrounding objects. Through this approach, Cézanne's meticulously studied apples, rendered through patient attention to color textures, appear to swell and burst beyond the constraints that conventional drawing would impose. In this effort to capture the world as we experience it directly, all classical artistic conventions disintegrate. Traditional painting instruction centers on perspective. The artist facing a landscape decides to present only a highly conventional representation of what they see. They observe the nearby tree, then shift their gaze to the road, and finally to the horizon. Naturally, the apparent dimensions of objects change with each focal shift. On canvas, the artist attempts to reconcile these various perceptions, seeking a common denominator by assigning each object not its actual appearance when directly observed, but a conventional size and aspect, how it would appear to a gaze fixed on the horizon. Landscapes painted according to these principles possess a peaceful, respectful quality, viewed from a detached perspective, maintaining proper distance between spectator and scene. They represent good company for the eye, which glides effortlessly across a smooth landscape that offers no resistance to its sovereign ease. Yet this isn't how the world actually presents itself through perceptual contact. As our gaze travels across a scene, we experience a series of viewpoints whose successive snapshots of any landscape section aren't perfectly alignable. The traditional painter only achieves a single, timeless landscape by interrupting natural vision, often closing one eye, measuring apparent sizes with a pencil, and submitting everything to analytical vision. The resulting canvas representation corresponds to none of our free-flowing perceptions, suppressing the vibrant, eventful unfolding of actual experience. Many painters since Cézanne have rejected perspective's geometric laws because they sought to recapture and convey the very emergence of landscape before our eyes. Dissatisfied with analytical accounts, they aim to connect with perception's fundamental character. Consequently, different sections of their paintings often appear viewed from multiple perspectives, giving casual observers the impression of perspective errors while providing attentive viewers the sensation of a world where objects are never simultaneously perceived, where time always intervenes between spatial elements as our gaze travels between them. Space isn't simply given but emerges through time, no longer the medium of simultaneous objects that an absolute observer could dominate from a position of equal proximity to all points, without specific viewpoint, without body, without spatial situation, in short, pure intelligence. As Jean Paulhan recently noted, modern painting space is heart-sensitive space where we are situated, close to us, organically linked with us. He continues that perhaps in an era devoted to technical measurement and quantity calculations, Cubist painters celebrate in their unique way, in a space aligned less with our intelligence than our heart, a profound union and reconciliation between world and humanity. Beyond science and painting, philosophy, and especially psychology also recognize that our spatial relationships aren't those of a disembodied subject with distant objects, but those of a space dweller with familiar surroundings. Consider the famous optical illusion, studied since Malebranche, where the moon appears much larger at the horizon than at its zenith. Malebranche suggested human perception overestimates the moon's size through reasoning. Indeed, viewing through a cardboard tube eliminates the illusion. He proposed that seeing the moon beyond fields, walls, and trees makes us aware of its great distance, leading us to conclude that maintaining its apparent size despite such distance requires the moon to be quite large. The perceiving subject resembles a scientist making judgments and drawing conclusions, with perceived size actually being judged size. Most contemporary psychologists interpret the moon illusion differently. Systematic experiments reveal our perceptual field maintains remarkable size constancy in horizontal planes while rapidly diminishing with distance in vertical planes, likely because the horizontal plane represents our terrestrial reality where vital movements occur and activities unfold. What Malebranche attributed to pure intelligence, modern psychologists connect to natural properties of our perceptual field as embodied beings who must navigate terrestrial existence. In psychology as in geometry, the concept of homogeneous space available to disembodied intelligence gives way to heterogeneous space with privileged directions related to our bodily characteristics and our situation as beings thrown into the world. Here we encounter for the first time the notion that humans aren't simply mind and body separately, but mind with body accessing truth about things precisely because our bodies are embedded in the world. The next discussion will demonstrate that this principle extends beyond space to external objects generally, which are accessible only through our bodies and thus clothed in human attributes, making everything we encounter a mind-body mixture.